Hello, BookTube. Trying to see if this is working. I don't do live streams nearly as much as I should, so I'm always a little awkward with the tech at first. And of course, it being the internet, the immediate front page interface of whatever technology you're using changes from month to month. Now, that's a very greatest generation thing to say, but still, it's true. It's true in my beloved Substack. It's true, appears to be true on the go live part of YouTube, but it seems to be working. I seem to be live, so I thought I would first of all apologize for a completely unplanned Stevestream. That's why I only gave you a few minutes to get on board. I don't imagine there'll be many people, but I don't imagine this will take long either. I've been oddly busy all day. Actually, the last 3 days have been oddly busy, and I don't particularly like that. I don't particularly like being busy. Now, some of the busy that has happened in the last week has been the kind that I can't afford not to like, which is paying work. I would be completely free from paying work if you would all go and subscribe to Steve Reads on Substack, but you don't, only a discriminating few, and so I can't turn down paid work, especially well-paid work. So that's been part of the busyness. And there have been a few other things, a few deadline things that have cropped up or shifted around. And that's happened all Friday, all Saturday, and all of today. And today was hot. So in addition to having all of that busyness, I had no relief valve. Frida and I went out for a short walk at 5:30, 6, something like that, when the vestige of the cool of the evening was still in the air and when the moon was still visible. And then we went out again around 10 in the morning, 10:30, 10 in the morning, for what ordinarily would be a short walk. But this was our long walk of the day, and it was still punishing. And I told her, I made it clear that this is going to have to do until the worst of the day's heat is over. And that was today, where the high temperature was, I think, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow it's going to be 92. And the day after that, 94. So I don't even have that release valve. And so I thought, after a while, I made a few videos for BookTube. I like to keep my hand in events where everybody hates me, and also announce events where everybody's going to hate me. But I didn't really do anything all that substantive. And then I thought, all right, well, that's, considering all this work that you've got to do, that's as much playing around with your imaginary BookTube friends as you can do. And then I had a rebellion on the inside. My transplanted rhesus monkey heart said, no, no one can be expecting me to be nose to the grindstone on Sunday all day long. So I decided, why not blow off a little steam with a Stevestream? I love the way Stevestreams make me feel. Usually, there's been only one exception to that. I have 4 friends who do YouTube professionally. They are part of an incredibly growing crowd of people who do YouTube professionally. And all 4 of them have said, well, if you're ever down in the dumps, just do a live stream. I'm convinced that at least 2 of those people say that because of money. Simple money. Because it represents an enormous windfall of money. They just implement super chats, only pay attention to the super chats, and just rake in the money. I can't believe that it's anything else, because they ignore the chats when they do it. But I have found it to be true anyway, that it really is a shot in the arm. Except there's only been one Stevestream that didn't feel that way at all, and that was because I was too reluctant to take advantage of the tools that YouTube gives me to bounce people who are only here to make trouble. It is not in my ethos, my personal ethos at all. And I have been able to get around that fact for all of the 20th century. Within the 21st century, a grown adult is going to yell schoolyard names at you in public, just stepping along, pointing and yelling a name at you. A person who has a job, a person who has family, is going to do something utterly childish like that. And there's no getting through to them. None at all. There's no conversation possible. Same thing with anybody who comes into the comment section of one of my videos or the chat in a live stream and says, give Trump a chance or go Trump or something like that. They're not looking for conversation. Our infinitely siloed personal realities of social media have made us not even care about conversation. I'm not here for conversation. I'm here to for the lols. You'd think that I would find some less ironic way to address that state of affairs than to hold a live stream with a chat. But nevertheless, I am aware of the irony anyway. And I thought, why not do that? Even at short notice, why not do that just to pick myself up? So it didn't give me any time to warn you, and it also didn't give me any time to really provide, to think up throat-clearing material. I mean, all of the stuff that I would talk about the news is negative. Possible hurricane approaching the south. There's this heat wave that I'm just at the doorstep of. This is the first day of 5 days of this, and all the days that are coming are going to be much worse than today. At least the humidity is low, but still. And all the national and international news is terrible. Just terrible, especially if you're an American, but also if you're anybody else, it's just terrible. I have said for going on 10 years now that when Donald Trump says that he loves dictators, and keep in mind, he never says he loves anyone else. He never had a positive word to say about anyone who was democratically elected or who isn't brutal. But I've said all along that when he says he loves dictators, it means that he wants to serve them. He is a weak man. And that's all that the news has been for the last 5 days, him just getting walked around the park by all the worst people in the world, of whom he is one. Because the dictator of Russia might be a bad guy, sure, but he's not a rampant sex offender. He's not a raper of children. So that is out too, because that is just negative. And then there's YouTube. There's YouTube news, but it also is kind of negative. I'm not 100% sure actually what it is. I've talked this over with only one person, but there was a BookTube channel, not a BookTube. Oh my God, not BookTube, YouTube. There was a YouTube channel. I noticed these things because I live online. I am what the kids refer to as terminally online. So I notice things, and I keep an eye on a lot more than a lot of people would think that I would. A lot of different kinds of things. I've lost track on this channel of how many times I've dropped a reference to something and had my email or the comments of that video just filled with people saying, it's not that I don't think your comparison is right. It's that I'm astonished that you know about thing X, Y, or Z. And this is probably going to be one of those. I found a channel called the Shameless Spur, SPERG. He had 800 subscribers, and he was sitting in his kitchen, and he was spewing pure, unadulterated 1800 style racism. He was well-spoken. Obviously, it seemed to me to be a country boy, but well-spoken, not an usual Trump fan. Instead, the kind of demographic that is far more numerous than most people think. I'm not talking about the mainstream media here because they don't think at all. But most people aren't aware of how many people in the country are not Trump cult because Trump cult is too mild for them. That is a huge number of people, and he's clearly one of those. To him, Trump is a useful idiot, someone to get him closer to what he wants, which is a white ethno-state. And I was listening to him talk at his kitchen table with this stuff that I don't know anything about him. I have no idea. He shows his face on camera. I don't know anything about him. I don't know anything about his life. I know he has a wife and family, children, but I don't know anything about his employment status. But it's just not. It totally surprised me that I was seeing it at all. And then he had 1,000 subscribers, and then he had 5,000 subscribers, then 10,000, then 20,000, then 30,000. Finally, he was around 50,000 subscribers. A merch store, a well-known patter. Amazingly enough, although I've had it on good authority that no matter how many times you make a BookTube video, it never gets any easier. It did get easier for him. He got better and better at it, smoother and smoother with his delivery. And probably not surprising to me, it did surprise me, but it shouldn't have. His race hatred started to vary up with especially a virulent anti-Semitism. He cannot stand Jews, but also hatred of gays. And I would imagine that it goes a lot further than that. If you put a button in front of him that allowed him to nullify the 19th Amendment, I really wouldn't trust that he wouldn't push it. And the whole time I wasn't subscribed to his channel, of course, and I never left a comment on his channel, but I was watching it as an experiment in my head. I was watching it thinking, how is this possible? How is YouTube allowing this? YouTube has terms of service. If I said even one of the things that the Shameless Spur said 10 of in every video, my channel would be pulled down. And yet it was video after video after video, and I kept wondering, and so did a lot of people in his comment section. A lot of also the people that occupy that space to the right of Trump were just automatically assuming that he was a federal plant, that he was a honeypot, that he was designed to draw people out in his comment section so that they could be identified, but that he was protected. A lot of people were saying that in his comments, saying, well, how else could he say this sort of thing in public with his face undisguised? He'd be fired from his job. He'd be exiled from his church. I don't know that that's true. And that would be even more disturbing. And the reason he's on my mind is because it looks like YouTube finally did take down his channel. It gave him time to build an enormous following on a bunch of Nazi channels. So I don't think he's going to suffer much. But it made me wonder how that phenomenon even happened. That took a month. He went from 200 subscribers to 50,000 in a month. I wouldn't be surprised if his channel broke records. And the only way you do that is if the algorithm is helping you. There's no way to do that grassroots-wise. But YouTube's algorithm surely cannot help someone in violation of YouTube's terms of service. Can it? I mean, unless they've got millions of subscribers. Hassan Piker breaks the YouTube terms of service every day. These weird multi-million subscriber professional YouTubers who are all completely insane, swatting each other, calling child protective services on each other, calling Homeland Security on each other as a routine matter just for the lulz and the views. They break terms of service all the time. Literally every time they make a video. YouTube doesn't touch them because they're revenue streams. But a small channel? And that got me thinking about the dead internet theory. I don't know if you've heard of this one. I promise I won't ignore the chat. I'll just throw this out, and then that's all I've got, is that the Shameless Spur channel was taken down from YouTube. I doubt it will be back. And it got me wondering about the dead internet theory, which is a theory that says that almost all of the internet is automated. It's bots. Now, Shameless Spur wasn't a bot. He was a God-fearing man in the country with a wife and children who hates Jews, hates black people, hates gays. I have my instincts. They were honed at a time when homosexuality was illegal in this country, punishable by hard labor. All of my instincts tell me that he hates blacks, he hates Jews, and he hates gay people. And all of my instincts tell me that he is one of those things. but it got me wondering, because if the dead internet theory would be an excellent explanation of why his channel flourished and why it took so long for it to be taken down. If no humans were involved, if no humans ever looked at it, if the process I'm sure that the bots are what vet the channels anyway, but surely someone has programmed the bots to flag things for human inspection. Surely that's true, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe the numbers are roughly right, that maybe 70 to 80% of everything online is not human, is automated. I have lost count in the last 3 months alone. I have lost count of how many times I've clicked on a video because it looked interesting, and the whole thing is bots. The whole thing is AI. I've lost track of how many times that's happened. So it could be. But anyway, it feels weird, but come here, baby. Come on. Come up on your window. Come on. What are you doing, baby? Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, you just want to be next to me. Okay. She just wants to be next to me. That's all. I'm afraid that's the only news that I have for you. So let's look at the chat and see what's on your mind. I'm sure you can liven things up. Gandhi says, am I the only one here? No, I'm looking at 6 people here. Gandhi says, I haven't been able to walk my bulldog due to the heat. He is cranky and missing the park. Yeah, Frida doesn't miss the park. She doesn't like parks. And she especially doesn't like dogs romping all around. It's just like that at all. But she misses the exercise. Both of us like to get back here from a long walk, nice and winded, loose, with the endorphins flowing and all that sort of stuff. And we can't do that. Jeff Messerman is here. Let me guess, you blame your producer for all this. I'm fired. Well, Bubala, you'd have to be rehired in order to be fired. You're still out in the wilderness. Because what was it? Oh, what was it? Because on Thursday we planned a show to tape on Friday, and on Friday my producer said, "Sorry, I can't. The middle schoolers are putting on a production of The Wiz, and I want to produce it." Nick Gurley says, we all blame you, Jeff. Yes, it's a very popular game on Cedarburg Public Library's Books of the Week, is to just fire Jeff on your own. Quaint and Curious Volumes. John Fosse has a government-provided mansion in Oslo, and you have to scrape by ghostwriting Sabrina Carpenter memoirs on Sunday. No justice. Well, he has a mansion because he's such a genius. Gandhi says, The Atlantic magazine. No idea what that is in reference. Oh, did a recent article on how summers are becoming like winters, with people staying indoors and getting seasonal depression. Well, it'll all balance out because winters will go away. So you will be able to, I'm not overly complaining about this. It's right now in Boston, right on the Atlantic Ocean, with the Atlantic current still active. It's not as bad as it will get. It is still possible to do. And I could, if I thought this was going to last for Texas length of time for an entire month, well, then I would rearrange everything so that the long walk was at 5 a.m. The only real hard parameter here is that my little dog really can't see in the dark. She really can't handle the dark. She likes to walk in daylight. Reader's Journey says, hey, Steve, I'm reading John le Carré for the first time on your recommendation. Holy cow, is it good? Yes, it is. Very, very good. Gandhi says, do you think Putin will pull out of his meeting with Trump? No. Why would he? Why would he do that? If it was announced that you were going to win the lottery, would you not go to the ceremony? Would you pull out of the ceremony? Kevin J.N. says, Steve, enjoyed your call to art video earlier this evening. I was just in a downtown gallery at St. Pete, Florida, and was admiring a portrait of Marilyn Monroe by a fellow named Weiland. Well, I won't be going to any art galleries. That's for darn tootin' sure. Kevin says he supposedly studied under Andy Warhol. It's a shimmer at night because he adds diamond dust to the paint. I'm sure he does. Colin says, yay, a Stevestream. Yes, a short Stevestream. SQE says, Steve, Your Highness, thank you for introducing me to Edward Gibbon. My pleasure. Colin says, could we ever get a Train Essentials starter kit? A starter kit about trains? No. SQE says, coincidentally, the day after I watched your Edward Gibbon video, I found 3 Penguin Classic books of Decline, Fall of the Roman Empire in a bookstore close by. I got excited and bought them. So the 3-volume unabridged. That's quite the find. I almost never see that. Jay Studio says, it seems like something is a bit off about your audio, Steve. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. Reader's Journey says, I'm excited to see what books you read or talk about for Framed in September, or just what your feelings are on different artists and pieces of art. Felix World says, hi, Steve, which translation do you choose for the Odyssey reread this year? Or do you just read the original? I have been very lazy with my annual reread of Homer. I don't know if you call it lazy. I am not reading a translation of the Odyssey in August. And that was reading different translations and playing or having fun with them was kind of the whole point of this. So that feels wrong. August has still 20 days left in it, so I'm pretty sure I will switch to a translation. Must Read More says, I woke up this morning to someone accusing me of making deeply offensive, rude, and ignorant political statements, even though I've never discussed politics on YouTube at all. Maybe it was a bot. I don't know. I don't know. I look at my comments field for bots, and I see them sometimes and block them. But a bot can make 20 bots in a second. And each of them can make 20 bots in a second. So blocking was kind of useless if that actually takes hold. Peyton says, "Hey, hi, Steve. I can't blame the ballroom being built on the White House lawn. I can't believe it. I've heard it's 200 million. It reminds me of the book Inside the Third Reich about Hitler's architect. What are your thoughts?" Yeah, it's an abomination. And so is all the rest of the stuff that he's going to do. That's all an abomination. What he did to the Rose Garden is an abomination. Bunny Mellon would be spinning in her grave. It's all an abomination. What he's done to all the internal decorations, the rugs, the mantelpieces, the art, the filigree and whatnot, what he's going to do to this gigantic ballroom, which will all be for money. It will all be for him. It'll be Mar-a-Lago. You will pay $250,000 a piece to get there. That won't go to the nation. That will go to him. And the extra story that he has planned, a tower that he has planned. And people have been emailing me about this a lot, especially the people who know how far back I go with the Rose Garden and Bunny Mellon through the Kennedy connection, asking me, how on earth is this possible? Can this possibly be legal? Can his successor do anything about this? It's surely a single president is not allowed to change this stuff. The White House is a historic monument. And I write back to them the same thing. You already know what I'm going to say. You're not going to listen. You haven't listened in 10 years, so you're not going to listen. He's not going to leave. That's why he's doing all this and not caring what his successors think about it, because he's not going to leave. Kevin JN says it's a 4300.00, and I can't picture you seeing it in a future architectural digest. I don't know what that's in reference to. SQE says, Saint Steve, please don't stop posting videos. Well, I don't intend to stop posting videos. Where'd that idea come from? The video posting in the month of August is going to hit some rough rocks, but I'm still going to do it. And SQE continues, Steve, what are your thoughts on Immanuel Kant, on his books? They're boring. Felix World says, I just read the Odyssey for the first time. I had to switch from Fagel's translation to Fitzgerald's, and I love it. Yeah, it's terrific. Oh, how wonderful. You're reading it for the first time. SQE says, Steve, can you read Hebrew? Not comfortably, no. The great trivium, the great trio, Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. Hebrew I can't do. Planet Moon says, how's the bean? She is wedged up against me here. She's quite fine. Quite fine. Little bit frustrated because it's hot, and I can't break it to her that this heat isn't going anywhere. Tomorrow's going to be much hotter than today, 10 degrees hotter. And the day after that, 5 degrees hotter than that. We're not going to get relief until the end of the week at the earliest. So SQE says, Steve, do you drink coffee? Nope. I drink water and cheap wine. And I don't only drink cheap wine when I have somebody to drink it with. So not regularly at all, not during the day at all. So during the day, water. That's it. Colin says, I am trying to remember a book you recommended by Larry Kramer, described it as the Iliad for gay literature. That would be his The American People. Two-volume mytho-historical fiction version of the history of the United States. The first one being everything up till the AIDS epidemic, and the second one being the AIDS epidemic. SQE says, which book makes you cry or at least gets you emotional every time you reread it? I don't cry when I read books. Afraid not. But I get emotional about pretty much every book I read. SQE is back. SQE is leaving too many comments. Let's nip that in the bud. The above question is to Steve. Well, I should hope so, yes. Peyton says, do you think Jon Stewart would make a good presidential candidate? Totally irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant. There aren't going to be any other presidents. You might not believe that, but you can't expect me to parrot a different line. All this stupid talk that I see on political channels on YouTube and on the mainstream media about the midterms and, long-term, is Bernie Sanders going to run for president in 2028 and whatnot? None of that's going to happen. I don't know how many houses you need to see fall before you admit the possibility of that, and maybe you won't admit the possibility of that. So we'll just have to part on that point. SQE is back with more questions, but we have to nip that in the bud, right? Asking 100 questions in a chat is weird behavior. But anyway, Steve, how do we reach your level of holiness? What is your secret? Clean living. Do you think Putin reads as in books for pleasure? No. And how do you assess his intelligence? Do you think he's smarter than Trump? Yeah, the plants that are on the shelf by the window over there are smarter than Trump. Trump is deeply, deeply stupid. He is a moron. Putin's not a moron, but he doesn't have anything that you or I would consider intelligence. He's mostly composed of scheming and paranoia. Colin says, yesterday was the 80th anniversary of the bombing of Nagasaki. Yes, I know. I was wondering if you had any moments or thoughts associated with the bombings. I also read Paul Ham's book, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, per your recommendation. Well, I have lots of thoughts about them. Yeah, I think it's a travesty. I think it's the greatest war crime that anyone's ever committed. Incinerating 2 cities full of people was not necessary to the war. All this business about how it saved 400,000 American troops that would have had to go island hopping, island by island, fighting a desperate and absolutely determined resistance to the Japanese homeland. Well, that resistance would not have been absolute and determined if those soldiers had been ordered to stand down. And if the Japanese powers that be, even the war cabinet, even the war element, had seen what an atomic bomb could do, they would have ordered those soldiers to stand down. The chat jumped. Karen P, your audio is fine here. Well, there's nothing I can do about the audio anyway. I checked the levels ahead of time. I can't do more than that. SQE is back. Steve, who do you think will last longer in power, Putin or Trump? Putin's a younger man. Trump will be out of power in 2047. America is not a country that has a long history of dictatorships, a long history of assassinations. Planned institutional bureaucratic assassinations, defenestrations, and Putin's Russia does have that history, so it's entirely possible that he could be killed soon, like in 2 years, in 4 years, something like that. Nothing like that is going to happen to Trump. He's going to leave office when he dies. Gandhi says, been listening to historian Sarah Payne on YouTube and enjoying her lectures. I don't think I know that name. Scott Jones says enforcement of rules on YouTube is uneven. Music appreciation channels like Rick Beto or Professor of Rock are flagged for the briefest blips of music, but other channels play long clips with no issue. Yeah, and the impression I get is that the channels that can violate it are the big ones. Kevin JN said, is South Park killing it this season in your opinion? The gnome parody was spot on. I don't see this at all. I don't see it at all. Good parody makes the people who agree with who like the object of the parody laugh. The object of the parody here, the people who like the people who are being mocked by South Park are the ones pumping their fists in the air the most. They're not laughing at the subject of this at all. And the actual subject of it are proud of it. So I don't see what purpose it's serving other than to normalize. Manny says, I've been reading some more and thinking more about McMurtry's moving on lately, and I definitely appreciated it a bit more after your scolding of me in the last stream. Did I scold you? Aw. Planet Moon says, I've been watching your videos for years, and it's the first time I've tuned in live and commented. I've thoroughly enjoyed your insights, informed a good deal of my reading choices. I appreciate it. Well, isn't that nice? I met at the Brattle last week. Someone came up to me and said she's been watching my videos since high school, and she's in college now. SQE says, Steve, is there any philosopher at all you find interesting or enjoyable to read? If so, who would that be? Well, I believe the joke in the last Stevestream was that if I like someone, they're not a philosopher. I believe in the last stream I was accused of no true Scotsmaning the whole thing to death. So I'm going to say David Hume. Or maybe Peter Singer. Peyton says, do you believe Sophia Stewart's work, The Matrix, was stolen? She's the real owner. I've fallen down the Sophia Stewart rabbit hole. I don't know that rabbit hole. I don't know that. DZGIGIN says, Steve, you must watch the new Naked Gun. It was literally insanely hilarious. Right. Okay. RTL LTR says, thoughts on Freedom McFadden? Not much. Not anything favorable. SQE says, sorry for asking many questions, Steve. Well, that's all right. We're out of time anyway. We're going to go to 10 past the hour. If that. This is already buoying up my spirits. That's what I wanted. Bookends and Books is here. Thank you for signal boosting Framed, and thank you for talking about your love of dogs over the years. It was instrumental in my adoption of my little Parker. Well, isn't that nice? Yeah, I never shut up about dogs. I talk about them all the time on this channel. I'm in a very rare period in my life where I only have one dog. That I think there's only been two other times in my life where that's been true, and it hasn't been true for long. But now I have just one. I have just one dog. That's all. And I don't. If you watch this channel, I don't go looking for them. I wait for so-called fate to bring them to me, and that hasn't happened. So clearly, I am quote unquote meant to have only one dog. Christina says, "Hi, Steve. Happy to catch a live stream. I know your end of the year list is still months away, but are there any fiction or nonfiction reads so far that are already front runners?" Well, that would be the question, wouldn't it? Andrew Russell says, "What do you think of the Salt Path controversy? Do you think it's groundless or says something about memoirs in general?" I think it says something about modern memoirs in general. It's just so dumb. Oh my God. It just, there's going to be some sort of a controversy. I would like there to be meat on the controversy. Like, for instance, there is a controversy right now. A gay book award nominated a guy who has said all sorts of incendiary, click-hungry things against trans people. Well, it's like many people said online, you can award anything to anybody you want, but if your award is premised on identity, then it is inherently identity politics. And therefore, why would you nominate an enemy? That, there's some meat on the bones, not the Salt Pack thing. DZIGIN says, reading Hour of the Dragon and loving it. Peyton says, Sophia Stewart apparently came up with the robots that have human flesh. Her book, The Third Eye, in 81. I ordered it recently for myself. She says James Cameron and others stole her work. Okay. I guess I was thrown by the title. There are no robots with human flesh in The Matrix. But The Terminator, sure. Samwise is here. Greetings, Steve. What do you think of the non-fantasy novels of George MacDonald, Sir Gibby, Malcolm, etc.? The non-fantasy stuff, not good. Usually not good. So if you took their name on it, you would never know that they had any reputation of genius. Peyton says, were there robots with human flesh before 1981 in other science fiction books? 1981, yeah, there were. Well, am I right about that? Yeah, there were some in the 60s. I could swear there were, yes. Well, and also, yeah, I'm sure there were. But also, Star Trek motion picture, right? Lieutenant Ilia, when she comes back to the Enterprise, has skin. Certainly she has human flesh, but she is not human. Manny says, I felt a bit scolded, weirdly so, because while I criticized moving on, I've honestly been loving every minute of the book, despite how slow. Oh, that's right. You said nothing happens in it. And I chided you for needing things to happen in it. Which is an odd thing for me to chide you for, considering that that's my sole criticism of Alice Munro. DZIG says, Steve, should I read Bone Collector by Jeffrey Archer? Is it good? No. Peyton Henderson says, The Terminator is her work as well as The Matrix, according to Sophia. Oh really? Okay. All right. That's starting to sound a little untenable. Gandhi says, do you think the death of Robert Gottlieb is affecting the publication of Caro's final volume on LPJ? Oh, my God. Oh, my God. You people are just looking for rants now, aren't you? There's not going to be a final Caro volume of LBJ. There isn't going to be one. Robert Gottlieb could die, go to heaven, and come back rejuvenated at age 30 when he was a 30-year-old a-hole instead of an 800-year-old a-hole. It still wouldn't have anything to do with it. Manny says, also, have you thought some more about our next read aloud should be? I know exactly what I want our next read aloud to be, but I'm hesitating on even announcing it, much less talking about it, because I don't know when it's going to happen. My August looks like a little broken ground. And these last 3 days have spooked me just a little. I'm used to being a lonely old shut-in on his couch. And that hasn't happened in the last 3 days. So, but I do. I have thought about it quite a bit. Street Medic is here. What's the best blurb you've ever written? Really don't rank them. I have no idea. Andrew says, I think Dua Lipa did a good interviewing Helen Garner on her first book club channel. I'll take your word for it. Samwise says, where are the appropriate times When are the appropriate times to use second person in a novel? At times I felt like it fit the story, but many times it can seem stylized just for the sake of it. Well, it is stylized just for the sake of it. I mean, it can be done. And it can be done for the whole length of a novel. It can be done. But it's inherently, what's the word I want? It's inherently counterindicated by simply the simple pre-literate world act of storytelling, where you are telling the story to someone else. So here is the story. You aren't saying you are telling the story to your audience. You're telling it to them. It can be done, but it mostly feels like a stylized gimmick. Mostly it does. And then there's the few stories that I have read that are in the second person plural, which is even more fun. Oh my God. Oh my God. I read one story years ago in Bark magazine, a magazine devoted to dogs, believe it or not, called, I think, Take Care of the Animals or something like that. I've gone out of my head who wrote it, but she wrote it in second person plural. It is the town talking to a character. And it worked. It really did work. But I don't know if you could make a book out of it. Nick Piccarilli says, how did your sainted ma feel about dogs? She was okay with them. She was okay with them. She realized pretty quickly that they answered to me and that they didn't answer to anyone else at all. Just fundamentally did not answer to anyone else. So get out of my way, come here, sit, roll over, or anything stupid like that. No. I had that happen sometimes where family members would think, well, Steve's not around for the day and his dogs are here and he doesn't teach tricks to any dogs. And how boring is that? So we'll get some treats and we will teach his dogs to sit or roll over, and we'll just not tell him about it. So that we can get some fun out of his dogs when he's not around. And the dogs would just sit and stare at them. Like, you can give me the treat or not, but I'm not doing anything you say. I'm not doing anything for the treat that you say. And me sainted ma realized pretty early on that was true, that there are two lines of communication here. One is for everybody else and one is for me, and that the dogs are mine. Just mine. So they will be affectionate as much as they can be. My beagles weren't all that affectionate with all that many people, but that's it. There's nothing other than that. That doesn't transfer anywhere. That is mine and mine alone. Hannah's Books is here, popping in for 2 seconds during a wine glass refill while watching Charing Cross Road with a friend, sending hellos to all. 84 Charing Cross Road, the movie with Anne Bancroft and Anthony Hopkins. Oh, what a movie. Oh, the scene where she's watching herself, the scene at the end, I won't spoil it, the scene at the end, anyone who's seen the movie, it's the one moment I'm sure will stick out to you. The scene at the end where she's watching herself on TV. She was filmed getting caught up in a protest and absentmindedly opening a letter. Oh, that moment when she reads that letter. Oh. RTL LTR says, is the Green Llama a good Garbo August book? Oh, yes. SQE says, Steve, why do you think the attack on the Pentagon didn't make any sense? It doesn't seem replicatable. It seems like it seems like a weird thing for hijackers to try to do based on their ability to do something that was technically physically impossible. Trained pilots can't do it. Trained pilots can't even imagine that it can be done with a commercial jet. And these guys weren't extensively trained. So why would they opt to try that when the overwhelming likelihood is they would ditch nose down on a highway and not even touch the Pentagon instead of flying the plane straight down into the Pentagon? Why would they opt to do that? That doesn't make any sense. Also, the initial damage to the Pentagon does not look real. It looks real. Definitely the building, something hit the building, but it doesn't look like it would look. There's a lot of what we could call forensic evidence about that attack that makes no sense at all. And also ancillary stuff. I mean, shops, gas stations near the Pentagon had people confiscating their surveillance cameras almost instantly. There's a lot of questions. To me, there are a lot of questions. I don't deny that something hit the Pentagon. Not at all. But anyway, the chat jumped, so let's go back up to where we were. There we go. Gandhi says, Kotkin's third volume on Stalin is scheduled for release in July of 2026. Do you doubt that too? It will never happen. Not with him. Manny says, also, I have 300 pages left on Moving On, so I might change my mind when left to germinate it a bit. DZIG says, Steve, what's the name of that controversial Sherlock Holmes pastiche that you said is very disturbing? The Dying of the Light. And it isn't disturbing. It's hateful. Caden says, hi, Steve. Do I need to have some background historical knowledge of the Tudors before reading Wolf Hall? Or can I just dive right into the book? Like I say, thousands of people have dived right into the book without any knowledge. This was a huge hit in England before it even came to America. Thousands and thousands of people who've read it and loved it and then gone on to learn about Tudor history, but they didn't know it when they started. I don't think it's all that necessary. I, for instance, have made an introductory video on my channel to Wolf Hall. Before I even did a read-along, I did an introductory video to sort of lay out the land work for you. Also, there's Wikipedia. If you read the Thomas Cromwell entry, that should do just fine. I don't think more than that. You're not going to be reading. You might think you are, but you're not going to be reading Wolf Hall for the historical fiction info dumps. Believe me, you're not. SQE says, Steve, did your sainted mother enjoy reading? No, she was always, she was going to enjoy reading, but not right away. I'm saving my eyes. She used to say, I'm saving my eyes. And when she got into, quadruple digits age-wise, I used to joke with her. She would say, I would say, do you want to try reading a book? And she'd say, oh, no, I'm saving my eyes. And I'd say, what are you saving them for, Ma? The organ donation bank? And she'd say, what are you, wise? That's your mother you're talking to. So no. Street Medic says, who do you think is the best Victorian era horror writer? No idea. Couldn't make the call. Peyton says, is Tiffany Trump his biological daughter? And what's the name of who you believe Barron's father to be? Tiffany Trump probably is. It's just a matter of a date on a calendar. I'm not exactly sure of Tiffany Trump's date of birth. I admit I should know, but I don't. But it's just a matter of a date on a calendar. There is a specific date on a calendar after which Trump cannot generate fertile sperm any more than he can generate body hair. He just can't do it anymore. It's a natural after effect of a health problem that it was widely known in New York at the time. So if Tiffany was born before then, well, okay, sure. The child that he claims was born after that, that's a fantasy. It's just another Trump lie. In this case, effortlessly borne out by the fact that the son is 8 feet tall and looks exactly like his mother. Anyway, Planet Moon says, I'm reading Barchester Towers with your read-along videos. It's a blast. It's my first time reading Trollope, and I was wondering if it's better to go back and read Warden straight after. The Warden is a very small story, very light, slight story, where Trollope is feeling his way towards, okay, he had a moment. He had an inspirational moment in A Cathedral Close. Oh, this might be a world where I could set a novel. And way in the back of his mind, when he had that moment, he was thinking maybe a world of novels. He wasn't dreaming at that moment how popular they would be. So with The Warden, he does something very light. It's very light footing. It's a small story, a saintly man. It's not a long book. And he liked how it felt. He liked not only the dramatic potentials of this tiny little teacup world of a cathedral town, but he also liked the comedy potential, which he unleashes in Barchester Towers. So you don't have to read The Warden at all. Barchester Towers is in every way a better book. But if you might be interested, The Warden won't take you long. Some Okie dude says, Donald is Barron's dad. Have you seen photos of Barron? He looks like him a lot. Okay, well, like I mentioned earlier in the Stevestream, no one disagrees anymore in order to change their opinion or even to be informed. They just stated that's the way it's going to be until they die, and they're going to have it carved on their tombstone. And there's nothing at all you can do to change that. Barron Trump is not Donald Trump's biological son because Donald Trump cannot generate fertile sperm any more than he can generate hair on his body. It's just a medical effect of something that happened to him. It's not my judgment on him as not being manly. But Barron Trump doesn't look anything like him, except in pout and slouch, and that's learned from looking at his father. Gandhi says Caro said that he has completed 980 pages as of March of this year. Well, we'll see. Some Okie dude says, my friend Raph recommended me The Power Broker. Apparently it's a good book. It's an excellent book. Peyton says, I just learned about Larry Potter and his best friend Lily, and I wonder if J.K. Rowling stole that character and added witchcraft. The Larry and Harry resemblance is uncanny. Have you seen the cover? I do remember something of this. I guess this is the plagiarism Stevestream. Caden says, also, I'm slowly making my way through the David Rayburn translation of the Metamorphoses. I'm enjoying it, but it seems like he's modernizing the vernacular a little too much for my taste. Am I alone in that feeling? You're not alone in that feeling. You might want to try a couple of other translations. Don't stick with one you're not liking. You've got all the variety in the world for Ovid, so don't stick with one you're not liking. Aaron 007 says, would you ever consider The Nightland by William Hope Hodgson for a read aloud? I know it's a long shot, but I thought I'd ask. No harm in asking. I would never in a million years consider it. DZJN says, just finished Kingdom Come. What Superman story would you recommend next? For the Man Who Has Everything. Also by Alan Moore. Or by Alan Moore. For the Man Who Has Everything. I'm sure that it exists as a trade paperback. You should read that next. And then when you're done with that, there's something called Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. You should read that. Peyton says, next time you have David Murphy over, you should go live together. That would be fun to watch. I never know. I can put it to him, but I never know how that's going to work because I never know. I have the gift of gab, impromptu gab. I love to talk with my imaginary booktube friends, and not everybody does, even when they have a lot to say. The last thing in the world I'd want with David or anybody else would be to do a live stream where they just clam up and become a hood ornament. Let's see here. Some Okie dude says, I'd recommend Superman Birthright. Samwise says, do you have any favorite Flintlock fantasy novels? Ooh, I do. Oh no, you'll know it. You'll know it. It was one of the earliest ones to break through and actually be called Flintlock Fantasy. Oh, what was the name of it? I'm picturing the cover, of course, but the picture is not accompanied by the title. Oh, God, I'm a bad Barnes & Noble customer. It had a man with a gun on the cover. I haven't read many of them, but that's one that I read, and I liked it. And I don't know if the Prentice Alvin books, the Alvin Maker books by Orson Scott Card, would they be Flintlock fantasy? There are Flintlocks in them, and it is a fantasy novel. I don't think it's what people have in mind for it, because there are women characters in it. But would the Alvin Maker books be Flintlock fantasy? I don't really know. If they are, then oh boy, can I recommend them? That's a towering recommendation. The Big Shep says, Steve, would you say Weave World by Clive Barker is worth reading? I'm interested in reading his work, but I'm not sure where to start. You start with Weave World. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how he has dropped out just completely? He's just gone. Maybe that's not true in the UK. I don't think that he has anything in print in the United States. That's a terrible shame. Sean says, hi, Steve. I'm a big fan of yours. It wasn't that nice. But I have a serious question. Do you not think it's anti-Semitic to sympathize with Palestinians like that? Sometimes I feel your rhetoric crossed the line. I'm not employing any rhetoric. It isn't rhetoric to say that the Netanyahu government is engaged in a genocide. That's not rhetoric. That's an absolutely incontrovertible fact. That isn't even sympathy with the Palestinians, although how can you not be sympathetic to people who are being exterminated in front of our eyes in live stream videos? It's not necessarily sympathetic with the Palestinians. I would be sympathetic with anyone that was going through what they are being put through intentionally by the Israeli government, which has announced over and over and over again its genocidal intent. That is not anti-Semitic. Despite how many laws are being passed in Europe and also here in the United States to say that any criticism of Israel is on its face anti-Semitic and illegal. Despite that fact, that is not true. You can claim that, you can make a law that says that, but that is not true. It is not anti-Semitic to criticize the Netanyahu government. The Netanyahu government is not Judaism. And what they're doing is not only visible, an incontrovertible fact, but also completely inexcusable on any grounds whatsoever, under any conditions imaginable. So no, my rhetoric, as you put it, does not cross the line. Anyway, SQE says, Steve, who do you think is the single most important human being in history? That would be John F. Kennedy. Gandhi says, Tim Cook giving Trump a plaque mounted on a 24-karat gold stand is so laughable. He obviously did his homework when it comes to gift giving. It's so easy to do. Yeah. Some Okie dude says, for me, Jesus, but we said in history. Jesus is not a figure in history. Street Medic says, when I saw the photo of Trump's ankles, my first thought was congestive heart failure. I'm sure that the White House is lying. I forget what their latest lie is about what that is. They can't say it's the deep state. They can't say it's Obama. It's visible. It's right there in front of you. No one in MAGA is looking at it or caring about it at all. But I forget what their latest excuse was, but I'm sure it's a lie. Manny says Steve would get jealous of all the attention David would get. Oh no, that would lock in the viewership. Yeah, if he did a live stream with me, I would tell him to wear a tight white tank top. There you go. Talk about eyes on the prize. Karen P says, "Are you a fan of Jane Austen?" Am I a fan of Jane Austen? Are you new to the channel, Karen P? At least you didn't ask me if I've read Jane Austen. That's a narrow escape. Yes, I am a huge fan of Jane Austen. I just reread Sense and Sensibility, but found it trite and boring. Then tried Tomlin's Jane Austen biography. Am I missing something in Austen? If you think Sense and Sensibility is trite and boring, you are definitely missing something. I love Eliot, Trollope, and Henry James. Okay. Well, maybe it's just not the right time or the right environment for you to read Jane Austen. You are in error about Sense and Sensibility. Simple as that. But maybe if it's not the right time, if you're not, as the kids say, vibing with it, definitely don't fight that. No point in fighting that. Grandma Joe says, hi, Steve. Can't stay. The four-legged boys want their morning walk. The Street Maggot says, Trump left Midas in the dust. Yes, it's ridiculous. It's so embarrassing. But it's not as embarrassing as it could be. There are plenty more embarrassing things this guy could do. DZ Diane says, thank you, Steve and Samoki Dude. SQE says, Steve, what do you think of Israel? What do you think Israel should do with the Gazans? What should they do with them? Well, mainly stop killing them, then feed them, open up the borders to let aid in, and food in, and water in. There's nowhere to put electricity because you've leveled all the buildings to dust. It's just a desert landscape where 1 million people used to live. It's not the Gazans aren't cockroaches that you have an exterminator problem with. What should we do with the cockroaches? They're people. It's not Israel's place to do anything with them. Some Okie Dude says those are good ones too. No idea what. Are you talking about Superman stories? I can't see the whole of the chat. So Gandhi says, in your opinion, which author commissioned to continue writing James Bond novels is the best? I haven't liked many of them much. They don't have what I want from... I actually, it opens a whole bunch of interesting questions as to what a pastiche novel, what you want a pastiche novel to do and not do. Do you want it to be a complete imitation of the original? Do you want to somehow capture some sort of essence of the original? I don't think any of them have captured Ian Fleming's original essence. But I'm hard-pressed to name what that is. I was about to say humor. But the Bond books are a lot less humorous than people remember. The humor really is exaggerated in the movies. I don't know. I don't know who I'd have do it. I wouldn't have anybody do it. Why do we need Bond pastiche novels? But it raises the question. I would have said the same thing about Smiley novels from John le Carré. But John le Carré's son wrote a great novel. So it shows me. Of course, the pastiche novels of Jeeves and Wooster are abominations. But I've never read a Bond pastiche novel that didn't feel more or less like an abomination. Planet Moon says, I'm thinking of reading Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. What do you think of it? I've only ever read the Ryu. I would pick another translation, but it all depends on you. It's not a question of, when it comes to translations, you're going to be living with the translator, not me, not anybody, not any expert, not any authority. So try it out. Try out a few and see what you like. Peyton says, would the best way to move/emigrate to another country to do like a 2-year language immersion program and then apply for a work visa in Japan or South America, for example? You're almost out of time. You're almost out of time. It takes, no matter what you do, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of paperwork to leave this country, and even more paperwork to enter another country. So English language immersion, sure, there are people always hiring for that. Something. You're almost out of time before the gates swing closed with the guns pointed in. There is now a concentration camp on American soil at which people are being tortured and in which people have died. All of them kept there illegally. All of them simply snatched off the street and put there illegally. That could be you. That will be you. It's a broken record. None of you are listening, so I know not to stress it, but no matter what you do, you shouldn't be idly thinking about it in 2025. You should be doing it. Anyway, Street Medic is here. Israel should leave the people in Gaza alone after they turn Netanyahu over to him to be tried for war crimes. Well, Israel's destroyed a lot of their infrastructure. It might be nice if instead of leaving people alone, they rebuilt. None of that's going to happen. The horrible thing about this whole thing is that we know how it's going to end. Peyton says, I have another plagiarism question. Isn't Avatar so similar to Pocahontas with added demonic possession of avatars? It's so similar to Disney's Pocahontas to men. No, there's no chance. No, that's not even close to plagiarism. Kevin J.N. says, are your Mega Stuff Oreos getting low? Do you need more treats to keep you going? I do need more Mega Stuff Oreos. I'm currently out of them. I need more Mega Stuff Oreos. I also need guidance from everybody. I raised it in a video yesterday. I need guidance from everybody about an iPhone. I'm sick of my Android phone. I need an iPhone 13, I think. I got a number of emails, people saying, I don't have an iPhone that I can give you. I'm using the one that I have. But the 13, I wanted that one anyway, and it seems to get high marks all around. Let's see here. Sean says, what is your theory on Epstein? Wouldn't I need more than one theory? What kind of theory are we talking about? I think he was certainly murdered, if that's the theory that you're talking about. I also think that he was a colleague of Donald Trump's. I think the obvious reason why Donald Trump would not release the Epstein files is because he is implicated in the Epstein files. There's no other reason. Why would he do it? He says that it's a Democratic hoax. That's absurd on its face. He also, on random intervals, depending on his Adderall intake for that day, will say that the Democrats are all implicated in it. Well, then why wouldn't he release it? Now, he is, as many commentators have pointed out, he is acting like the guiltiest person who has ever lived in the history of the world. And that's because I believe he is. Street Medic is here. Being anti-genocide is not the same as being anti-Semitic or pro-Hamas. I agree completely. I don't get that. Well, I do get it. I know exactly why it's done, but it is so obvious a dodge. It's just so obvious a dodge that I don't know why people do it. Peyton says, what do you mean Jesus isn't a figure in history? Just that. He doesn't exist in history. He exists in religious documents that proclaim him as a god. That's not history. No one mentions him as a historical item. No one. There's no corroboration that he existed at all. It's all in the Bible. It's all in the Bible. The minute you step out of that, you are engaged in the Catholic Church and in the Christian churches 2,000 years of warping the record. The minute you step out of those are the only ones. That's it. That's all. A gigantic miracle worker, thousands and thousands of people following him in the countryside, following him into the city of Jerusalem, at a time when at that exact moment there were 4 professional historians working in Jerusalem. None of them mention him at all. There's a much later mention of Christians, but not of Jesus. Not at all. Not in any way that by anyone who's saying, hey, I was in the market square and saw this, or I talked to someone even who did. No, nothing like that. He doesn't exist as a character in history. He is a character in theology. In other words, mythology. Some Okie dude says, yeah, are you one of the people who denies Jesus was a historical figure? I certainly do. Of course I do. Yes, I deny that he was a historical figure. Christianity is a historical phenomenon, definitely. And the presence of Christians in the ancient world, the growing presence of Christians in the ancient world, is attested to by Tacitus. Pliny the Younger famously writes a letter to Trajan about Christians. But Jesus, anything like what happened, the Gospels are mythology. They are a series of miracle stories. If you're going to say that they corroborate a historical Jesus, then they corroborate historical Satan. Am I supposed to believe in Satan? No. There's nothing. No, not at all. Christianity, yes, obviously. There are early attestations of the growth of Christianity. But Jesus? Who do you even mean by that? Who are you even talking about? You're talking about a figure from the Gospels, which are religious documents proclaiming him as a god. Anyway, DZIN says GRRM is good for new James Bond novels. Just, yeah, might as well. Manny says, my friend told me today she has watched The Hobbit and not Lord of the Rings. So my question is, how do I legally force someone by force to watch Lord of the Rings? You have a friend who's watched the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies, but not the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies. Lordy. That is incredible. You mentioned George R.R. Martin writing James Bond. I just thought of somebody that, it's weird, it's out of left field, but I bet he'd be good at it. Marcus Zusak. I don't know if he's a Bond fan. Probably he's not, but I think about his earliest boys' adventure type novels. He'd probably be good at Bond. Let's see here. Planet Moon says, I read Turn of the Screw recently and thought it was rather dull. Oh boy. I really don't understand how it merits an enduring interest with people, because it's not dull. Don't get me to defend Henry James, but still. Some Okie dude says, I meant the Superman stories. Yeah, Alan Moore's Superman stories are fantastic. A damn shame he never did more. Scott Jones says, given that a framer charged me $200 to reframe a print, perhaps I should participate in the framed event by reading a how-to book on making picture frames. That's one way. You don't have to make picture frames, though. Another way to get around the exorbitant, eye-watering prices of picture framers is to go to a thrift store and buy a framed painting for $5. If you eyeball the size of what you want, right, and use creative matting, that will often work. SQE says it's not impossible that a Jewish preacher named Yeshua in the first century existed. His miracles are another story, though. Right, but there's no separating the two. If you're going to talk about Jesus like he's next door, if you're going to talk about a familiar character named Jesus, then you can't denude that character of literally everything but his name and then say that could have happened. So he is historical. Now, when you're talking about Jesus, you're talking about somebody, a character that we all know better than any character from any other fiction. We know this character. And that character did not exist in the real world. Sure, there might have been a preacher named Yeshua. I'm sure there was. But what difference does that make? If you have to take away, there may have been a carbon-based unit that had a blood pressure. So that doesn't really help. It's Jesus that we're talking about, not just some guy. Sean says it's not Israel's fault that Hamas is stealing the aid and using it to make weapons. And anyway, this land was given to Israel thousands of years ago, long before the Palestinians even existed. No, that's wrong in every way. That is wrong in every way. I know you know that. But you're just saying it anyway. But it's wrong in every way. No one is stealing the food to make weapons. And the land wasn't given to the Israelis thousands of years ago. 100 years ago, it was all Palestinian. And no one thought that it belonged to anyone else. And when you say given, you mean by God, a God. And gods don't exist. There are no gods. So who was it given to them by? Santa Claus? Pope John Paul II? It wasn't given to them by anybody. Land that's occupied by other people cannot be given to someone else. No, all of that is just wrong. Just completely wrong. There were Palestinians thousands of years ago. They were the people who lived in Palestine. Street Medic says, even if Jesus was based on a historical figure, all the miracles can be explained, including the resurrection, which fits diagnosis of hemopneumothorax. There was no resurrection. There was no crucifixion. That's all mythology. SQE says Sean is a bad boy. Well, Sean knows what he's doing. That is all just, it's all just Hamas propaganda, stealing the food. He knows what he's doing. He's not a bad boy. He's just being outrageous for clicks on the walls. Karen P says, do you think Ghislaine Maxwell will be exterminated? No, worse. I think she'll be pardoned. Gandhi says, I am disappointed in Stephen Colbert's recent shows. Giving Trump the finger in his monologue isn't exactly acerbic wit. Well, I've been disappointed in his shows for a while, so it's not much of a change for me. Chatty Daddy, that's a name I don't know. Thanks for the recommending Bruce Catton and Samuel Eliot Morrison. Love Catton's Civil War trilogy and Morrison's John Paul Jones biography was surprisingly funny. Oh yeah, Morrison's great. Every bit of wit, every bit of eloquence, perfectly sculpted sentences. Yeah, well, that's wonderful. I'm glad you like them both. Some Okie dude says, Steve, there's photographic proof that Trump and Epstein knew each other. Of course there is. Yes, there's a lot more than just that they knew each other. Yeah, there is photographic evidence all over the place. Doesn't matter. The cult doesn't want to hear it. They have already shown, and they will show by the end of summer, they will all be saying it. They'll all be singing from the same hymn book. The outliers said it first, that we don't believe that Trump did anything, that Trump's a pedophile. That was the first spasm of reaction. Second spasm of reaction by the outliers in the Trump cult was, if he is a pedophile, then we're not completely against pedophilia. And by the end of the summer, that will be the Trump cult stance, is that pedophilia is okay. I mean, do we really know that it's not? Can we really say that it's not? I'm sure they'll find it in the Bible. Street Medic says, Two Ocean War by Samuel Eliot Morrison is one of the best World War II naval histories I've ever read. I agree. Samwise is back. Steve, what do you think of the SPFBO contest, and how many of the novels entered do you pick up? What on earth is that? Do I know what that is? It's ringing a faint bell. I don't think I know what that is. I'm not enough to comment on it. Sean is back. If Jesus didn't exist, then how was resurrected? Usually to do that, you need to exist in the first place. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. I agree. It didn't happen. There was no resurrection. People don't come back from the dead. Who says there was a resurrection? 3 or 4 Gospels do. Why do they say it? Because they're telling me a story about a person who's a god. There are no gods. You can see it's a perfectly closed electronic circuit. It's just a story. It's just mythology. That's all. Michael V says, after all the Holocaust movies and history lessons, I have to deal with people who go, well, actually, in the face of patent genocide. It's depressing. I know. I think it would be hitting me a lot worse if I weren't expecting it. The collapses that are happening all around us here. Once I saw in 2015 that Trump's presidential campaign literally could not do anything wrong, that everything it did wrong, sinful, horrible, evil, disgusting, was being condoned by the media and the world. Once I saw that, I started anticipating a lot of this stuff. So it isn't as depressing as it could be, but still, this isn't America. This is another country, and it's being filmed. It's astonishing to me. Peyton says, was Buddha a historical figure? No. Not the Buddha that you're thinking of. When you think of Buddha, you're thinking about a supernatural being. There are no supernatural beings. There is no supernatural. If there's a supernatural, prove it to me. Show it to me. Samwise is back. Boy, I'm surprised you're sticking Samwise. For those of you who don't know, you should all go and subscribe to his channel. Click on his icon with a picture of him reading with a baby, and subscribe to his channel. Samwise is a perfect example of what I talk about on my channel all the time, about how it is weird that I don't have 500 subscribers and he doesn't have 5,000 or 50,000. That is just weird. He's a perfect example of it. I could come up with lots of other examples of it. And you should all go and subscribe. But you seem like a very calm, mild-mannered person. I'm surprised you're sticking through this live stream, especially since the fur has been flying. But do you prefer the Tarzan novels or the Barsoom novels? Do you have favorite editions of them? The Barsoom novels, hands down. Oh my God. I love a lot of the Tarzan novels. I think they get a little tedious, but I love a lot of them. I've read the Tarzan novels. I don't know how many times, but as many times as I've read the Tarzan novels, I've read the Barsoom novels and exponent more. Just they are in the I have a category of books where I have read them so many times that it isn't even reading when I go back to them. I don't even know what it is. And they are in that category. Absolutely. Oh my God. I love them so much. But I know about editions. I have the last paperback editions. I think it's Ballantine that had the Michael Whelan covers, was it? That are very nice wraparound illustrated covers. And I keep hoping. I mean, I really, really hope for a Barsoom version of that great 3-volume Conan set with original illustrations all throughout. Oh my God, what a set that is. And I keep hoping that someone will do that with Tarzan or with Barsoom, and I doubt it'll ever happen. But oh my God, the novels, I like them more than Tarzan. Rasmus says, if you don't mind me asking, what's the story behind your not having feeling in your hands? Well, it's all over. It's not just my hands. It's not an injury. No, it's a kind of neuropathy. I've learned to live with it. It's not that big a deal. It bars me from a few things. I would have to be a lot more cautious. I have to be very, very cautious in the kitchen, for instance, or back when I left this couch. One frequent thing that came up is that in a stranger's house, you never know how hot the water is in the shower. You have to. It's a long time ago, so I'm completely used to it. Street Medic says Jesus was most probably a creation of Paul, and I doubt he existed in history, but I'm agnostic on the question. Manny says, was Garbogus? Oh wait, where did you go, Manny? Manny's here. You were mentioning there with Garbogus. I've been thinking about trashy music that I love. So, what is your favorite piece or artist of fun, trashy music? Well, that is a lot of competition. Of course, I get crap from people for a particular Bob Seger song that I love, that everybody tells me is the wrong Bob Seger song to love. They tell me it's a bad Bob Seger song. But in terms of intentional trash music that's in on the joke, like all the trash for Garbogus that I like the most, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy would be right up there, certainly. Some okie dude says, wow, okay, I'll leave for now. Take care, Steve, until next. Okay, I have no idea what that's about. Samwise says, SBFBO is Mark Lawrence's self-published book novel context. Sort of Kagan was one of the most famous winners a few years ago. Maybe that's why I know it. I don't know anything about it, though. Street Medic says Jesus is based on previous existing stories of demigods, including Hercules. SQE says, Steve, what would you say to someone who's pro-Israel today? Oh, wait, that's probably what some okie dude is saying. That I said that the resurrection or Jesus is mythology, and that's why he's leaving the chat. Okay, that might be what he's talking about. What would you, SQE says, Steve, what would you say to someone who is pro-Israel today? Well, I would leave a conversation with someone who was pro-Israel today. I wouldn't say anything to them. But about them, to the next person I talk to, I would say, there is no doubt here. There is no question of what you're in favor of. It's true that Israel is trying for there to be doubts by shooting every journalist who goes into the forbidden zone, that just like an innocent country would do. But it doesn't matter. There is no doubt what's happening here. So if you are pro-Israel in 2025, you are pro that. You are pro what's happening, with all that entails. I wouldn't want to talk to someone who was pro that. Tolstoy 111 says, but on a literary topic, do you like There But For The by Ali Smith? It's not doing much for me. I don't think I read it. Manny says, yeah, I started reading my first Livy today because I've been reading Durant's histories, and so far I really enjoy Salencourt's translation. Salencourt's translation is really good. I'm rereading the early histories that I just found. I just got it for free, so I'm rereading the Salencourt translation. He's really good. It sticks out like a sore thumb to me when he is taking liberties, but I'm assuming you can't read Livy. So you won't know. You won't have any idea. And it doesn't matter with the Liberty so much, because the Silent Court that you're getting is very much in the spirit of Livy. He's channeling that really well. Peyton says, does Trump know Barron is not his, and is he in denial? Did Melania ever get in trouble? Well, Trump's a moron. He's an egotistical moron, and he believes every good thing that is possible about himself. When he says that he's the best, unironically says that he's the best president that the United States has ever had, he believes it. When he says he's the best golf player who's ever existed, he believes it. He really believes it. When he says he's the ultimate scientist, the ultimate deal maker, the ultimate economist, he believes it. He believes all that. So undoubtedly he believes that Barron is his son. And God forbid you have a blood test done. I'm sure that Barron won't have a blood test done, because I don't think there's anyone inside there. And Melania can't misbehave because she belongs to him. She belongs to Trump. She's not his wife. She's his property. He bought her from her previous owner. So she can't get in trouble. She can't misbehave. She's skirting the line by so openly hating him, as any slave would hate their master, I would assume. Street Medic says, I don't think anyone has ever been resurrected from the dead, but there are medical emergencies that may appear that way to uneducated people. I've had lots of code saves of people in cardiac arrest. There were no code saves in 33 AD. SQE says, to be honest, with no ill intent, there is no genocide in Gaza by definition. You are wrong. And willfully wrong. You know you're wrong. I understand there's lots of destruction, obviously, but to be a genocide, there needs to be intent. The intent has been instated by every single member of the Israeli government, past and present. The intent has been stated. I'm not going to convince you. I assume I'm not going to convince you, but there are montages that people have put together on YouTube that you can watch for free, of the dozens and dozens and dozens of statements made by every kind of official in Israel, from Netanyahu on down, stating openly genocidal intent. No more Palestinians alive. And that is what's happening. 100, 200 people a day, starving them, cutting off their water, pouring cement into their drinking water wells. You're wrong. I think you know you're wrong, but whether you do or not, anyway, SQE says, wait, the chat jumped. Andrew McDonald says, is Bertrand Russell's autobiography worth reading? Yes, very much so. Tolstoy 111 is responding to SQE. Sean says, anyway, can you talk about your travel in Greece? Where do you assume that's going to be? Where did I go? I went everywhere in Greece. Naturally, I did, since I fell in love with Greek literature before I went there. Ancient Greek literature. But I went everywhere. Very hot. Very, very hot. Oh my God. Ren DMC just found The Last Mughal by William Dalrymple for $1 at my local bookstore in perfect condition. Good for you. Good book. Colin says, any recommended books about John Dryden? Yeah, there's one called John Dryden and His World. It's an oversized thing. It's probably out of print. It's really, really good. Really, really good. And there's also a much slimmer book, also out of print, I'm sure, called Dryden's Intellectual Milieu, that would be really good, but not right away. You'd need to know a little about Dryden to like it, I think. But Dryden and His World is perfect for that. Full of illustrations, too. Manny says, speaking of Sword of Kaigan, are you a fan of it? I've heard a lot of great stuff about it, which prompted me to read the first chapter out of curiosity, and I wasn't impressed. I have to say, I wasn't impressed either. The same thing happened to me. I heard all sorts of people talking about it, so I got a copy sent to me, and I read it, and I wasn't all that impressed. It seemed very by the numbers to me. Street Medic says, Kung Fu fighting is pretty trashy, but I can't help singing along with it. Well, yes. There are all sorts of songs like that. Yeah. SQE says, which they do. Anyway, Sean, why is Greece no longer a world power like they used to be? I went there and it was kind of gross. It's an impolitic thing to say, but yeah. Yeah, it is kind of gross, especially once you get out of Athens. It is kind of gross. And these things happen, right? A country will bestride the world like a colossus, and then that time will be over. There are all sorts of factors, but these things happen. You can never tell, you can never predict what the factors will be. The main factor in the case of ancient Greece was Rome, but there are all sorts of others. There are all sorts of other factors too. All it takes is for the focus of trade to shift, for instance, for that to happen, which would mean that it would be absolute insanity for a U.S. president to start a tariff war with the rest of the world. It will guarantee that trade will shift elsewhere, that the poles of trade will shift. That will guarantee it. Books Supreme says, I just read I Serve the King of England by, I know who wrote it, thanks, by Ravel, and loved it. Not sure if you have mentioned it before, but I felt like a Steve book. It is very much a Steve book. I've mentioned it many times. It is very, very good. Glad you liked it. Street Medic says, Greece was never a world power. They were a Mediterranean power when they weren't fighting among themselves. Well, they were a world power in the Mediterranean when that was the scale by which we measured things. Whoop. A chat jumped with Karen P. There we go. Dylan Mathias says, hi, Steve. In the past, you've said one of the main jobs of the critic is to see if the author succeeded in what they're aiming for. Is it possible for a book to fail at this and still be good in some way? Sure. Sure, absolutely it is. Oh, yeah. The author still has skills. I mean, they might not have completely realized their vision for one particular book, but they still have skills, I would hope. Literary Wanderer says, what do you think of John Irving? His books, you mean? Or his ability? No, I better not. His books, you mean? I have never read a John Irving book that I unreservedly liked. I should. Given the givens, I really should, but I never have. So they're not worthless, but I'm not a fan of them. Manny says, yes, I can't read Latin, but I read Salencourt Herodotus and adored it, so I felt like a safe bet. But I'm wondering how much of Livy is true. I'm sure I'll find out later with Durant, but still. Well, that is the big question with Livy. How true is it all? Believe it or not, despite what his critics say, he cared very much about that question. He just didn't resist a good story along the way, any more than Herodotus did. They're very much of alike. Sean says, but you are saying it should be legal to criticize Israel like that right after October 7th. It makes Jewish people feel uneasy, especially in colleges. So what? So censorship? I don't care if it makes them break out in hives. It should not be illegal to criticize the Netanyahu government. That's insane. I'm not saying Israel here. I'm not saying Israel like you're saying it in capital letters and italics with maybe God's finger doing the writing. I'm saying the Netanyahu government, a corrupt government led by a career criminal. I'm saying the Netanyahu government. It shouldn't. If it makes a Jewish person on a college campus uneasy, if I criticize the Netanyahu government, maybe they should go back to the nursery. That's what conversation is. That's what free speech is. Brian Constantine says, and besides, I, like everyone else, was completely on Israel's side in the immediate wake of October 7th. Completely on their side. The whole world was. And I said it at the time, on record, on camera. So that doesn't give them a permanent get-out-of-jail-free card for anything they do after that. Brian Constantine says, read a book by Terry Eagleton about Marxism, wondering if his biography and other books are worth reading. No. Winston Vidal says, what resources are you using to base your assertion that Hamas is not diverting food from its people? On the ground reporting. For the people who are there and are watching what's happening. I'm not going on any kind of propaganda. I'm going from the people who are there. The few people who are there who are able to see it and talk about it. John Nemzow says, Steve, I just watched the new Fantastic Four movie today. Curious what your opinions on it are. I really liked it after going in very skeptical. I actually liked it quite a bit myself. I think everybody did a great job on it. I really, really did enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Superman. But I also went into it very skeptical. And I was totally turned around. MFR Claire says hi. Brett Zakari is here. Hi, Steve. What do you think of Anne Leckie's Ancillary Justice? I didn't like it all that much. Boy, contemporary science fiction is taking a beating in the Stevestream. Colombian Thunder says, hi, Steve. I'm currently reading William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. I imagine you don't enjoy it since I know horror isn't your thing. So far, I like it. Also reading my first Poirot mystery. It's fun. I didn't like The Exorcist, no. SQE says, Steve, what do you think of David Irving? I have a lot of thoughts about David Irving. I think it's a terrible shame. I think it's a terrible, terrible shame. Underneath all the crap, underneath all the anti-Semitism, underneath the outright Nazism, I honestly do believe in his earliest books, it's possible to see the potential for a really good historian, someone who had been read for 100 years. It is possible, I think, to see the bones of that before it gets buried in crap. Sean says, but why do you think Southern Europe is so unclean compared to Northern in general, or am I wrong? I don't think you're wrong. And I don't know why. All sorts of theories, some of them more disturbing than others, but I don't know why. I noticed it when I was traveling, but I don't know the reason. Freeman says, reading a Star Trek novel, The Patrian Transgression, enjoying it. Okay, good. Let's say Claire. Let's just call you Claire. I think there's a difference between Israel and Jewish. It seems to be forgotten in the conversation almost all the time now. Forgotten and also intentionally blurred. The Netanyahu government knows perfectly well that that is the club they should use against all criticism, is that it's anti-Semitic. They know that perfectly well. They're cynically using that. Street Medic says, The Exorcist is part of that legendary era of the 60s and 70s of great mass market paperbacks. SQE says, the whole world was not on Israel's side when October 7th occurred. You're incorrect. I was watching. A declarative statement. You're incorrect. Israel had the sympathies of the whole world in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, just like the United States did in the immediate aftermath of the terrorist attacks of 9/11. By the whole world, I mean everyone who isn't evil, who isn't involved in the terrorist attacks. Of course, Hamas was not on Israel's side in the immediate wake of October 7th, but everybody else was. I don't know who you're thinking of, or maybe I can guess who you're thinking of. SM3 says, hi, Steve. When will you make a BookTube starter kit? We need to hear from the expert. I've made a BookTube starter kit many times. Unless you're talking about a Hidden Truths of BookTube video. That wouldn't be a very good idea for me to make, now would it? Manny says, do you have a favorite autumnal book? I've been feeling in the mood to read something in that vein lately. Afraid not. I don't usually think of things that way. SQE says, I absolutely agree with you in regards to David Irving. I think it's a terrible shame. For obviously, in the main, I think it's a terrible shame that Hitler and Nazism have the power to pull down souls even when they're all dead. When they've been dead for half a century, it's still possible to do. That the allure of that never dies. If you get too close to it and you're susceptible to it, you will fall to it. Obviously, I think that's a shame. But I also think it's a shame. I think I know it is so easy, especially after his loss at trial. It is so easy to just dismiss him as disgraced historian David Irving and leave it at that. When I think what he has written, what he has said, and what happened to him is so much more interesting than that. We'll have to see. I think David Murphy and I, when we're in our cups here at Hyde Cottage, have commented from time to time that the only person that either one of us trusts to ever write a biography of David Irving is the other. He trusts me to do it, and I trust him to do it, but nobody else. Tolstoy 111 says, "Is Tom Tryon's the chat jumped? Is Tom Tryon's The Other worth reading?" Yes. Boy, that's a name you never hear anymore, considering how popular he was once upon a time. MFR Claire, Michelle, and Goldie here. Why is the tendency to want to allow all groups to voice their opinions except Palestinians? Yeah, you listen to the Palestinians, you'll hear what's happening to them, but people don't want to hear that. Book Supreme says, do you like Marshall's The Mercurial Emperor? It's high on my list. Not sure that I know it. Dylan Matthias says, I recently read my first Woodhouse, The Intrusion of Jimmy, and I enjoyed it. I found it a little slow for my taste. Should I try my hand at one of his Jeeves and Worcester stories? Absolutely. Yeah. Now you know what he can do. Now you know basically what you're in for with a minor novel, a very minor novel. So now read Joy in the Morning, Jeeves in the Morning. Read Jeeves in the Morning and see if it does more for you. Street Medic says Rome was really trashy. There was garbage everywhere, but I really liked Florence. I could live in that town. SM30 says, Steve, does John Grisham qualify for Garb August? Not my Garb August. No. There are lots and lots and lots of people who unironically love John Grisham, and I don't want to be taking pot shots at books like that during Garb August. There isn't a mean bone in Garb August body. So that is John Grisham, Tom Clancy, Danielle Steele, Nora Roberts. I don't want to pick those authors myself. What other people do is up to them. I don't want to do that. I want to pick books that are a lot clearer. Dylan Mathias says, speaking of starter kits, I was surprised I couldn't find a Steve Darlinghue romance starter kit. I'd have imagined you'd have made a starter kits for all major genres you read. Well, romance is different. Romance is different because the snobbery against romance is so ironclad. People are, even very cloistered readers can be momentarily curious about mystery novels. I've never read one, but I don't have anything against them. Maybe momentarily curious about science fiction. Never read it, but a lot of people like it. But romance novels, I have found that usually the resistance is so mitochondrial that there's no point in making a you should start here video on them. You should get rid of that before you have a starter kit for romance of any kind. Andrew McDonald says, I'm going to see Carl Dreyer's The Passion of Joan of Arc tonight, but I suspect it's not one of your favorites. I don't know that I know The Passion of Joan of Arc. A lot of things I'm coming up blank on here. It's denting my reputation for omniscience. Brian Constantine is back. I also began Annie Jacobs' book on Area 51. So far seems like fun, but not sure how reliable she is. Well, the Area 51 story is well documented. Not the myth of Area 51, but the story is well documented. What the very first thing was to be seen, scraps of a weather balloon. That if you go into the actual footage, the actual microfiche of the actual newspapers, of the actual first things that were seen there, you know exactly how the mythology started. Sean says, let me ask you a random question. What lesson do you think we as the U.S. can learn from the Athenian Empire? None. The U.S. is not going to learn anything. What should we learn? Get rid of dictators. Get rid of oligarchs. They are the death of every civilization. Eventually, they are the death of any civilization once they take it over. So get rid of them. But the U.S. isn't going to learn those examples at all. The example that should be learned here is not by the U.S., it's by Americans. Americans should emigrate. Should waste no more time posturing about being a hero. They should emigrate. Unless they want to just try. If you're thinking, well, it'll be a dictatorship, but it won't be that bad, you're wrong. We're plenty of first-hand accounts of what it's like to live under what's coming in this country. You're not going to enjoy it, and you're not going to be free to say you don't enjoy it. Anyway. Street Medic. The Destroyer books are good for Garb August. Remo Williams is awesome. I agree. The Destroyer books are The Last Ranger, The Specialist, all that sort of stuff. The Executioner, those are perfect for Garb August. I've been avoiding them stubbornly, trying to find garbage in all the wrong places, but they're always there if you need them. Tolstoy 111 says, oh no, the chat jumped. You're not saying that. Re David Irving, I was thinking Houston Stewart Chamberlain is a comparison, but the latter was apparently trash from the start. Well, you can't say that about David Irving. He wasn't trash from the start. He became trash. He became a Nazi. Mark says, dude bro question. A hallmark of dude bro literature is that it's a puzzle, something the reader, preferably not a woman, gross, has to figure out. And if that's so, is Umberto Eco not dude bro or adjacent? No, you notice the dude bros never mention it. They don't bring up Umberto Eco. And the reason why is because there is, no matter what other features of dude bro that you think about, there is something that tends to repulse them. They'll never admit it. Of course, they think the opposite is true. Literary talent. Actual literary talent tends to repulse them. And they'll never adopt Umberto Eco. Never. They'll never do it. Including Foucault's Pendulum, which even I know, I don't have the understanding of it that Jason Harrigan does, but even I can see that it is a masterful puzzle of a book. But they won't adopt even that. No way. No way. Tolstoy 111 is responding to someone else. Manny says, I talked to someone about romance lately, and if Jane Austen wrote romances, do you think she did? She did. She's the origin of romance novels. Pride and Prejudice, I would say, itself is the origin of romance novels, of the whole genre. I thought it was obvious, but so many people seem to disagree with me that I feel a bit unsure. No, people will say that it's not obvious, or they'll disagree with you because we've elevated Jane Austen to the canon, and we haven't done that. That she's at the canon. She is regularly compared with Shakespeare, with Tolstoy, the greatest writers who've ever lived. And the romance novels as a genre are the exact opposite of the spectrum. They're at the end. They're the thing everybody looks down on. Brett Zakari's back. This is going to sound weird, but I am sort of intimidated by romance. It's just so much, and I have no idea where to begin. Well, the first place to begin would be in your heart. If you already think it's dumb, then there's no point in recommending anything. James Abbiati is here. Hi, Steve. Sorry I'm late. Have you announced the next read aloud yet? No, I have not. No, because I think the rest of August is going to be a little bit of broken ground running, and I don't want to make a promise I'm going to have to just postpone. SQE says, Steve, what conspiracy theories do you love reading about the most? Oh my God, there are so many of them. There's so many of them. Of course, the JFK conspiracy theories, but the murder in Dealey Plaza, that's high on the list. 9/11 conspiracy theories, I love reading about them. Just love it. The Shakespeare authorship controversy probably is my single favorite one. Oh God, there are so many. RFK, the assassination of RFK, the assassination of Martin Luther King. What happened at Jonestown? Cool. I can go on and on. I love them. Sean says, I noticed that you never talk about or brag your knowledge on history and literature. Do you think this is a common trait with people who are high IQ where they downplay it so they can relate to people? Who says I'm high IQ? I've filled this room with high IQ people, so I don't have any illusions along those lines myself. But I would hope that I don't ever brag, except when I'm intentionally being obnoxious just to have someone tell me to shut up. But I hope that I never brag in earnest. No, not at all. I don't downplay anything to relate to people because that feels awful condescending. I will sometimes soft pedal the extent of what I've read. Just because I've been told in this room, in company, that it can sometimes seem weird. I don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to offset anybody. Colombian Thunder says, admittedly, romance is a genre I've never read, but I would like to. If Jane Austen is romance, I guess it could be a good start. Oh, Pride and Prejudice, you should read anyway. Curious about more contemporary romance authors that are good. I'd start with Pride and Prejudice, if I were you, and see what you think of it. SM30, what is your favorite part of Canada? Well, it's not a part that, it's not a building or a courthouse or anything like that. It's the extreme, it's the deep woods in the extreme northwest, way up by the Arctic Circle. Still Canada, but you go a long time without meeting any Canadians. Jesse says, what you think about Huismanis and Latremont? I don't know either one of them well enough to really expound on either one of them. Huismanis I've read in English, in English language translations, but not well enough to have any. You know more than I do. I'm sure you do. Dylan Matthias. Oh no, Dylan Matthias. The chat jumped. There we go. If one assumes that some do that in order to be a genre story, it can't have any literary merit, then Austen didn't write romances, but you don't really see this definition applied to other genres. Okay. Sean says, can you now talk about Mondani in New York City? I think he's a communist and probably a terrorist as well, but would like to hear your thoughts, please. A communist and a terrorist. A terrorist. Sean, I don't believe that you actually think that. I think you're letting other people do your thinking for you. I think he's a normal progressive candidate, the type that doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting elected. J. Scott Phillips is here. I'm always late to these things. I know there's no sense in a blob watch, but what else can you do for me? I can tell you something. A recent email that you sent me. Those 3 trade paperback volumes of the Illustrated Conan, I want those. I know I said I didn't, but I do. I want them. See that they're on the front doorstep tomorrow morning. But anyway, no, there's no point in a blob watch. Well, actually, is that true? Let's try. New England is under a heat wave. We're under but a blob watch might be interesting to see the latest satellite info on the hurricane that is possibly headed for the south. Most of the weather patterns in the United States, there are active weather patterns, but most of them will be invisible. They don't involve precipitation. They involve massive pressure changes, but not really massive storms. Yeah, see, precious little going on there. But I think if we widen this out, we will see, there's Hamilton in the Sargasso Sea. And there's a storm right behind that actually looks like it has a better chance of becoming something real. But that's what I can do for you. I want those 3 paperback volumes. Send them to me right away with Oreos. I'm out of Mega Stuff Oreos. James Abbiati is back. Just finished the new Robert E. Howard biography. I thought it was excellent. Can you recommend another really good pulp author biography? There was one on Lovecraft. Oh, Michael K. Vaughan would know. There was one a few years ago on Lovecraft that I thought was quite good. Oh, I'm blanking on it completely. I'm no good to any of you people this way. Street Medic says, do Penthouse forum letters count as romance? The chat jumped again. Let's see. Andrew McDonald says, I recently saw the documentary on the never-released film The Clown Who Cried. Do you think Jerry Lewis was the right person to make a film about the Holocaust? No, he wasn't the right person to make a film about anything. Colombian Thunder says, I'll start with Pride and Prejudice then. Yes, start with Pride and Prejudice, definitely. And my videos. I read Pride and Prejudice out loud. You can watch those videos if you want a little enthusiasm booster. M. Claire, I've been searching for Massachusetts/Vermont/Maine authors. Found Gene Stafford last week. Do you have suggestions? Yeah. Massachusetts authors? Yeah, I do. I have way too many suggestions to reel them off the top of my head. Gene Stafford is good to start with. Sure. Damien P. says, how's Miss Frida? She is wedged right next to me. I don't know why. I don't know why she is. I mean, the AC unit is running, but still, my body is hot. I don't know why she's pressed against it, except that she likes that. Manny says, yes, I tried to explain to them how just because Austen gently satirized some of her characters, that doesn't mean she is mainly a satirist or a social critic. So the snobbery is even among Austen fans. Yeah. SQE says, Steve, what are your thoughts on the authorship of Anne Frank's diary? I believe she wrote it, but was surprised to find out how many people believe it was written by her father. Yeah, amazing. I wonder what's behind all that, but it was written by her, obviously not by her father. Colombian Thunder says, Mondami's support was a breath of fresh air. I agree. But alas, I think this country is too doomed for any good news about him being elected or about any promising elections. No, you're right. I wouldn't count on it. What you should do is emigrate. What you should do is get your papers in order, liquefy a lot of your assets, and emigrate. That is not fantasy. I'm not going to harp on it. Everybody that I know is going to wait too long. So it's not just a question of protesting in the streets or withholding tax money or writing letters, incendiary letters or whatnot. It's not just that aspect of the age-old question, what would you have done in the 1930s if you'd been in Germany? It's also the other half of that, what would you have done, in that everybody who reads accounts of the growth of Nazi power in the 1930s in Germany always says, why on earth did you stay? Why did you stay? After a certain point, you couldn't leave. Why didn't you leave when you could? Okay, so Americans are going to do both of those things. J. Scott Phillips is back. You're always so generous. I'll ship them right away. Do it right away. SQE says, Mamdani is interesting. I wouldn't vote for him personally. Tolstoy 111 says, Lewis, the Nutty Professor is a fantastic film. No, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. Paul Marin is here. Will you be doing a 20.5 Q&A? Sure. I actually thought about a Q&A. I thought about a Q&A earlier in the week. I thought I would do one just randomly because I thought I would never have an opportunity to do a live stream anytime soon. This came out of the blue. This was a lot of fun. We should still do that. I said 10 past the hour an hour ago, didn't I? Well, let's wrap this up. Winston Vidal says Dennis Lehane. No idea what that's in reference to. Dylan Matthias says Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts. I detect a bit of prejudice against New Hampshire. Uh, uh, Sean says, do you think that some people pretend to like books they don't read? Like, I read Shakespeare Folio this year, and I'm not going to pretend I liked it, even though people will sneer at you for saying. All right, that was a little garbled, but I think the answer to the first question is certainly there are plenty of people who say that they pretend to like books they don't. Mark says, asking Steve for Massachusetts authors, Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ. Has no one heard the adage, be careful what you wish for because you might get it. Must read more says, I recently read a long arm novel and it was just like reading Penthouse Forum. I thought some scenes were hilarious, but the rest was pretty good. Columbian Thunder says, I also found a copy of Masters of Ascent at a local thrift store for about $3 and in great condition. Boy, people are having good luck. I'm not going to the Brattle when it's 95 degrees. I'm not going to leave Frida here when it's 95 degrees. Manny says, I've been sort of wanting to watch Wicked, but it's so long. Do you like it? No. Sean says, one of the main people I listen to on current events is Victor Davis Hanson. What are your thoughts on his work, please? He's Trump cult, so he's garbage. There's not really a reason to going into much more detail than that. He's Trump cult, so he's garbage. M. Claire, I'm not from here and totally forgot NH. Sorry, no prejudice intended. The New Hampshireites have it coming. Mandy says, speaking of horrible movies, what is your favorite fun, trashy movie? Deathstalker 2. Winston Vidal says, Dennis Lehane is from Massachusetts. He wrote Mystic River. SQE says, I was surprised to find out Nazis didn't call themselves Nazis. They referred to one another as the party comrades. Nazi is a slur, I believe. I'm not sure. M. McClure says, yes, hoping for email with a list of authors. It would be a huge email list. James Abiati says, did you mention new illustrated Conans, or was that a reference to an old set? No, the old set, the Ballantine trade paperbacks, which I somehow don't have. I must have given them away. They're keepers. Dylan says, thanks for the stream, Steve. Have a good evening. Yes, it was wonderful. This was so much more enjoyable than I expected. Book Supreme says, do you like Milan Kundera? Never met him. I don't like his books. SQE says, St. Steve, thank you for another great Steve stream. Amazing as usual. Well, thank you all for being here. Paul Marin says, does this also apply to Dr. Phil McGraw? Street Medic says, I had a retirement account, but I cashed it in because of Trump, and now he's letting Wall Street investors access to them. So I got out just in time. You did not get out just in time. You're still living here. You're imagining that this isn't going to affect you. You should emigrate. M. Claire says, thanks, Winston. I'm more of an E.B. White fan and like these. Tolstoy 111 says, people who stayed in Germany deserve far less sympathy. The Enabling Act was just a few months after AH took power. I agree. Far less sympathy. I might not. I agree a little. Let's just say that. I agree a little. The Enabling Act was mere months after he took power. Right. And the Supreme Court granted Trump unlimited power, and only him. That decision was only meant for him. Wasn't meant for any other earlier presidents. And it was done in the clear acknowledgement that there will be no subsequent presidents. And that's the same thing. It basically allows Trump to do whatever he wants. Sean says, well, I have voted Trump 3 times and hopefully a 4th time in the future, but I respect your opinion. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're a goddamn Nazi. Duffy Pratt says, thoughts on King Rat? I was very pleasantly surprised given how many people denigrate it in comparison to Shogun. I think it's pretty good. It's nothing like Shogun, but it is pretty good. J. Scott Phillips says, thanks for the Blob Watch, which is best Hamilton, the book, the musical, or the Storm? The Storm is considerably better than the musical. Brett Sakari says, a 4th time. Oh, Sean, I know. I lost my temper there just a bit. A 4th time would be illegal. It would mean a dictator. He was a racist, sexist, fascist, lying moron the 2nd time and the 1st time. It was just meant to get my goat. But anyway, we're wrapping up the stream anyway, so it doesn't matter. Colin says, what are your thoughts on King David's relationship with Jonathan? Me likey. Colin says, "What is more close person? Was it more than a close personal friendship?" It certainly reads that way. RTL says, "Where to immigrate to? The world is a mess." Okay, whatever rationalizations you're going to use, I'm sure that you can pick some places. Ren DMC says, "What are your thoughts on Arthur Schlesinger's The Cycles of American History?" Kind of boring. Colombian Thunder says, I almost suspect Sean is a troll with that last remark. Yeah. Okay, and I don't want to give Sean the final word. I don't want to give a goddamn Nazi the final word. So let's move on to Manny. Deathstalker 2. Do I need to see 1? You do not need to see 1. No, no, you don't. 1 is boring. 2 is sublime. And they aren't anything alike. Don't think of them as alike. All the Deathstalker movies are different. 1 and 3 are very much of a type. 2 is completely different. Completely. You'll see what I mean. The minute you watch it, you won't even need to know. You won't even need to think about the first Deathstalker movie. Just think about the Schwarzenegger Conan movie. That's all you need to do. Just think about that when you watch Deathstalker 2. If it's possible to watch Deathstalker 2, I have no idea where it is. I have no idea where it is or if it's available at all, but definitely watch it. Definitely. Colombian Thunder says, "Have a good night." Winston Vidal says, why aren't you taking your own advice about emigrating? Okay, however you want to do it, however you want to rationalize it. But anyway, M. Claire says, "Thanks for the stream. Don't worry about the troll. Constitutional law, ethics, and morality override all." No, they don't. They don't override all. You should emigrate from this country. Colombian Thunder says, "Deathstalker 2 is free with ads on YouTube." Good Lord. Well, then none of you have any excuse. But anyway, Wolf H says, "Any recommendation of countries to emigrate to?" Portugal, Holland, ironically enough, Mexico, in certain parts of Mexico. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up before it gets. I've given this advice many times. None of you are going to listen to it. That's okay. We don't need to worry about it. We don't need to worry about it. This has been a very fun Stevestream, and we will keep doing it as long as we can. So I don't know when the next Stevestream will be, though, because I did this Stevestream explicitly to avoid work that I shouldn't be avoiding. So that's, of course, going to pile up for tomorrow. It's easy to avoid deadline work on Sunday because no one's around on Sunday, but it means everything is due on the end of business on Monday. So maybe only 1 video tomorrow, 2 videos tomorrow, who knows? But this was fun. This was exactly what I needed. Oh my God, this was exactly what I needed. So I'm gonna wrap it up now, and I will see you all in the next Stevestream and also in my own videos. So thank you all. Thank you all very much. This was wonderful. Oh my.